I like to say that most people suck, and when I tell people that, I almost get this like people just fall over and they either they get upset or they start laughing and they're like, yeah, I get it. And you know, I was hesitant about talking about this publicly, but I think if we have this idea of most people suck, I think it would change a lot in terms of what goes on in your mind. This helps me tremendously if you have the simple view that most people suck, and all of a sudden everything will go a lot more easier for you. If you come into it, so the general consensus, the reason why everybody gets flabbergasted is there's this general consensus that we have to acknowledge that people are extraordinarily talented and doing, really great things. But the truth is if you actually look at it, most people don't, right? The distribution of people doing things is not the way that you think about it, right? The sort of social norms of how we classify things is that everybody is doing spectacular things. And it's not even a bell curve traditionally in terms of how you're thinking about it, that it's evenly distributed, that a lot of people are doing good things in the middle, but it's actually more like it's tilted in one particular direction where there's a few people that actually do a heck of a lot of stuff and change a lot of things, and then a lot of people actually don't do as much as you think that they would do. And this is pretty normal if you like to, no pun intended, for those of you who know what normal distribution actually looks like, but it is very typical patterns where you see a lot generated by a few individuals. This is called the Pareto distribution. This was found like 200-300 years ago. And yet we assume our social norms is that we need to always have this belief that everybody performs spectacularly well and does good, amazing things in life. So if you default to that, you're going to have a much more realistic view of the world. Now, there's a really important thing beyond that that I think about, and I've already lost people and they're already upset right now because listening to this, but it's really setting yourself up so that you understand reality a little bit more, and that you are a kinder person to yourself and you're a kinder person to other people. Now, this presumption that everybody has to perform spectacularly well sets expectations very high. And inevitably, nobody's going to meet those expectations. Your belief that everybody performs spectacularly well is going to let you, you're almost always going to be let down. And this is a challenging thing that I've had to reconcile in my head, what is going on. And if you come in with that belief that everybody sucks, right? Nobody is good at anything, then you will not be surprised nearly as much when things don't go as well as you thought they would. But here's the other thing, is that you're going to have a lot more self-forgiveness when you think like this, because you realize, like, man, everything is really challenging. This conception that we understand the world, or we should perform spectacularly well every given time, or that we should continuously improve, that is a hard thing to think about. In fact, and there's this sort of saying is that self-improvement is toxic. And I kind of abide by that, because you're always thinking that there is a better way, that, the way that you're living right now and what is going on in your life is somehow default to the wrong. You are somehow, imperfect. And that's a challenging thing to live with for your whole life, is to have spectacularly high expectations on yourself and other people. To me, I think this is a recipe for disaster, because you're almost always going to feel that you're not good enough. Everybody is always going to let you down, and you're going to have a lot of emotions that you have to deal with are very powerful. And usually it's really upsetting, right? If that's you, you'll go down a death spiral and you will think about things in a very negative way, and you think like, I can't do anything, and I'm pathetic, and all of those kind of things, which I struggle with that as well. But then for other people, if you believe everybody is really good and they should have their act together and that they should never make mistakes, golly, you are a jerk to work for. An absolute jerk, because you're going to always, even if you don't say it, you'll give that look, you'll have condescending tones. All of those things are challenging things to work with, right? And that's where I struggle with this. I'm going to tell you that. It's very hard for me. And so I've had to learn to realize that, yeah, you know what? Most people do suck. And if you come to terms with that, then you will realize that not only are you okay, but everybody else is pretty normal. And they are doing what they are doing. You're going to give people a tremendous amount of forgiveness to the best of your ability. Now, I'm not saying to be a pushover at all, right? But I'm saying to come into every situation realizing that it's extraordinarily hard and setting things up so that you don't have to run into problems in the future. Right? If you expect everybody to perform at a very high level, then you will inevitably have a lot of disappointment. But if you expect them to perform at a very exceptionally low level, then you're going to come into it thinking, how do I set up in such a way that I'm happy, they're happy, and everybody is doing quite well? And it's a lesson learned many, many, many times over. You might think of this as very pessimistic, but it's actually a very optimistic view. Because then you come into things understanding the real, true reality of what's actually going on, rather than believing that everybody should be performing at some unrealistic, idealistic, high level. And that's just simply never true.